You wake at 4 in the morning. Your heart is going. The sheets are damp. Your legs are still braced under the blanket. Something was chasing you. You cannot remember its face. You are not sure it had one. Now hold that feeling and carry it backwards. Past your bedroom, past every house that ever had a roof, back to a windbreak of branches, a low bed of embers, and a sky with nothing between it and you. Somebody there woke exactly the way you just did. Same heart, same braced legs, same nothing chasing them through the dark. You went to bed to rest. You woke up tired. 8 hours in a warm, locked room, and your body has the receipts of a night spent running. So you decide something is broken in you. Bad sleep, too much stress, some private malfunction. Nothing is broken. The machine is running exactly as it was built to run, but somewhere along the way it stopped finishing. By the end of this, you will know what the last part of a nightmare is supposed to look like, and why yours keeps getting cut off before it arrives. Start with the strangest fact about dreams. They are not random.
For decades, researchers have collected dream reports the way other scientists collect rocks. Calvin Hall and Robert Van de Castle built a coding system for exactly this. Thousands of reports, sorted line by line. Who was there? What happened? How it felt? Stack all of it up and a shape appears that nobody designed. Dreams lean dark. Across large samples of adult dream reports, the emotions that turn up are more negative than positive. Aggression is more common than friendliness. Misfortune is everywhere. Falling, being chased, being watched, your legs turning to wet sand while something closes the distance. Think about how odd that is. You are lying still in the safest hours of your life, and your brain elects to spend them frightening you. If dreaming were only noise, the noise would be neutral. It is not neutral. It is biased, and it is biased in one direction. A Finnish researcher named Antti Revonsuo looked at that bias and made a proposal. In the year 2000, he published it in a journal called Behavioral and Brain Sciences. The idea is simple and slightly unsettling. Dreaming is not entertainment. It is a drill.
He called it the threat simulation theory. The claim is that dream consciousness is an ancient defense system, selected because it can rehearse dangerous events over and over in a place where dying is free. You practice spotting the threat. You practice the escape. You wake with your reflexes a little more worn in, and you never had to meet the actual animal. It is a hypothesis, and researchers still argue about it. But it makes a prediction you can test. If the drill exists to prepare you for a dangerous world, then children living in a dangerous world should dream harder. Somebody checked. Katja Valley and Revonsuo, working with several colleagues, compared dream reports from Kurdish children who had lived through severe trauma with reports from children who had not. The traumatized children remembered more dreams. Their dreams held more threats, and the threats inside them were worse. The system does not switch off when the world gets frightening. It turns up. Now watch your own body while it happens. In the stage of sleep where vivid dreaming mostly lives, your muscles are switched off, not resting, disabled. A signal from your brainstem cuts the line between your intention and your limbs. Your brain fires the command to run, and nothing below your neck receives it. That is why your legs will not work in the dream. That is the wet sand.
Now ask why that shutdown had to evolve at all. You only need a switch that stops the body from acting if the body is genuinely about to act. The paralysis is the strongest evidence that the rehearsal is real. The dream is convincing enough that your muscles have to be held down by force. So picture the night this was built for. A camp, long before cities. The fire has gone down to a red seam in the ash. A child sleeps between two adults, in the middle, where children are put. Somewhere out past the edge of the light there is a leopard, and it will still be there in the morning, and everybody sleeping knows it without saying so. Inside that child's head, the drill runs. Something moves in the grass. The child turns, and the legs will not go, and the dark leans closer. In the morning, the child is fine. The leopard never came. But a small nervous system has now practiced the worst night of its life, at no cost, in a bed, between two warm bodies. That is an absurdly cheap way to learn an expensive lesson. Evolution does not walk past a bargain like that. Here is the part that turns the whole thing around.
In 2023, a team led by David Sampson published a study in Scientific Reports that did something dream research had rarely bothered to do. It left the university. They collected dream diaries from Bayaka foragers in the Congo and Hadza foragers in Tanzania, then compared them with dreams from people in wealthy industrialized countries. Nearly 900 dreams, more than 200 people. You would expect the forager dreams to be gentler. They are not. They open with more danger, life threatened, animals, death, real teeth. But they do not stop there. The forager dreams move. They begin in the threat, and then they travel out of it. The danger arrives, it gets handled, and the dream resolves. And look at how it resolves. Not with a clever trick, not with the dreamer suddenly turning powerful. It resolves through other people. Someone comes. The group closes in. The threat gets absorbed by a community that shows up inside the dream itself. In the comparison samples from the industrialized world, that second half was far less likely to arrive. The fear turns up, the fear stays. You wake in the middle of it, heart going, with nothing resolved, because the resolution never came. Your nightmares are not worse than your ancestors' nightmares. Yours are shorter. You are getting the first half of a two-part machine.
There is a reason the second half matters. The stage of sleep where dreaming happens is chemically strange. The stress chemistry that floods you during a frightening event in daylight is turned down during that stage. Matthew Walker and Els van der Helm have described it as a kind of overnight therapy. You replay the emotional memory in a room where the alarm is muted, and each pass strips a little charge off it. The memory stays, the stain comes down. But a rehearsal only teaches you something if it reaches an ending. Run the fear 100 times and never once reach safety, and you are not processing anything. You are practicing fear. And the ending human beings evolved to reach for is a person. Now put yourself back in your own bedroom. You sleep alone, or nearly, behind a locked door, inside a sealed box, in a room engineered so that nothing will ever happen in it. The last faces you saw were on a screen. Most of them were strangers. Several of them were angry. Then you wake at 4 with a leopard in your chest, and there is nobody to hand it to.
Notice what is chasing you now. Across the world, the same handful of dreams keep repeating. Being chased, falling, arriving unprepared for a test, standing somewhere with no clothes on, teeth crumbling out of your mouth. The leopard changed shape. It became a room full of people watching you fail. Your drill kept running. It simply retooled for the danger you actually face, which is other humans, judging. In the morning, nobody asks. You do not tell anyone. You reach for the phone before your eyes are properly open, and the whole thing is gone by the time the kettle boils. The drill ran, the debrief never happened. Notice who this hits hardest. Nightmares are most common in children, and they thin out as people get older. That is exactly what a training system looks like. It runs hardest while you are new. Then it quiets and it waits, and when your life gets frightening again, it comes straight back up to volume. Which means the 4 in the morning heart is not a defect report. It is a status update. Something in your waking life is being rehearsed because some part of you has decided it needs rehearsing.
So if you wake tomorrow with damp sheets and your legs braced against the blanket, you can stop treating it as proof that you are falling apart. You are running the oldest safety drill your species owns, in a body doing its job perfectly. The problem is not the nightmare. The problem is that you keep being handed half of one. And the missing half is embarrassingly ordinary. Say it out loud. Tell whoever is nearest, over coffee, and the plain stupid words you have at 7 in the morning. I was being chased, and I could not run. Let somebody pull a face at you. Let them say that sounds horrible, and then say something dull about the weather. That is not a wellness tip. That is the back end of a machine older than language, sitting unused, waiting for the one ingredient your ancestors had in unlimited supply. You wake at 4 in the morning. Your heart is going. Something was chasing you, and it has been chasing your family for a very long time, and it has never once caught anybody. You are the proof. Now go and tell somebody, and let the dream finish.
Right now, in a warm room, with nothing hunting you, a wave of tiny bumps just rose across your skin. Maybe it was a song, maybe a line in a film, or a memory that arrived without knocking. The back of your neck prickled. The hair on your arms stood up. A cool ripple moved over you, and then it was gone. You are one of 8 billion people carrying a reflex older than your species. It fired in animals that lived and died millions of years before the first human face existed. And it just fired in you, at a desk, over nothing you could touch. Because nothing happened. No wind, no cold, no teeth in the dark. Something invisible moved you. A sound, a thought, a feeling, and your body answered as if the world had changed. And a small part of you may have felt faintly silly for it. A grown adult, skin bristling at a chorus. But hold on to this until the end. There are thousands of tiny muscles in your skin, And at this moment, some of them are straining to do a job that ended over 1,000,000 years ago. They are reaching for something you no longer have. And the chill a song sends up your arm is the ghost of it, standing up. Let's go find out what they're reaching for. Start with what a goosebump actually is. It is not your skin doing something odd. It is a muscle, a real one, with a name. At the base of every hair on your body sits a tiny slip of muscle called the erector pili. It is thinner than a thread. You have millions of them laid across your arms and legs and neck and scalp, and each one knows a single, simple move. It pulls. When it contracts, it tugs its hair upright and puckers the skin at the root into a small dome. Multiply that by a few 100,000, all at once, and a wave of them rises together across your skin. Here is the part that matters. You did not decide to do that. You cannot. There is no button for it, no muscle you can flex on command the way you close your hand. These muscles answer to a different government entirely, the ancient automatic nervous system that runs your heartbeat and your breath and your fear without ever asking you. It is the same system that dumps adrenaline into your blood when a car swerves toward you. When it fires everywhere at once, and your hair stands up whether you like it or not. So this was never a decision. It was always an alarm. Now, why would a body evolve an alarm that lifts its own hair? Look at almost any other mammal, and the answer is obvious. Because on them, it still works. Watch a cat meet a dog. In half a second, it doubles. Its fur stands straight out, its tail swells to a bottle brush, and a small animal becomes a big one without moving an inch. It didn't grow, it bristled. Every hair yanked upright by millions of those same tiny muscles, turning a house pet into something you would think twice about. A frightened porcupine does a fiercer version of the same trick, and so does almost every furred creature that has ever been cornered. That is the first ancient job, size. For an animal in a fight for its life, looking bigger can end the fight before it begins. A bristling creature says, without a sound, do not. And there is a second job, quieter and just as old, warmth. Picture a small bird on a freezing morning, puffed into a round ball twice its normal size. It is not sick, it is trapping heat. Lifting every feather opens a layer of still air against the skin, and still air is one of the finest blankets on Earth. Furred animals do exactly the same thing. Raise the coat, thicken the pocket of warm air held inside it, and you keep the heat you cannot afford to lose. On a cold dawn, that reflex is the difference between waking up and not. So walk back into the body of one of your distant ancestors, deep in the animal line, long before language. A cold, gray dawn on an open plain. The temperature drops, and before any thought can form, the coat rises on its own and holds a skin of warm air against the body. Later, a shape shifts in the tall grass. The heart slams, the blood floods with alarm, and the fur stands along the shoulders and the spine, and the creature is suddenly larger, harder to swallow, more trouble than it is worth. The muscle pulled, the coat lifted. It did exactly what it was built to do, and its owner lived to pass it down, to you. Now look down at your own arm. Where is the coat? This is the strange, quiet twist at the center of all of it. Somewhere across the long walk of human evolution, your ancestors shed their fur. You do not have the thick pelt anymore, just fine, faint hairs, most of them barely visible, standing over bare skin that shows the whole thing plainly. The muscle still fires. It still pulls with the exact same ancient signal it has always used, but there is almost nothing left to raise. So you don't puff up, you don't look bigger, you don't trap a warm blanket of air. You get the dimple, the small dome, the faint prickle, the movement of a coat that isn't there. The reflex has outlived the reason for it. You are running an animal's alarm on a body that deleted the fur 1,000,000 years ago, and the alarm has never once been told. A newborn does it too, in the first days of life, long before anyone could teach it. It is not a habit, it is inheritance. Which leaves a real question. If the fur is gone, why hasn't the reflex gone with it? And why, of all things, does it answer to music? Because the trigger got wired into something new. Remember, these muscles obey your alarm system, the automatic circuitry of fear and arousal. In an animal, that system speaks only the language of cold and threat. But as your ancestors' brains swelled, and their lives filled up with song and story, and the faces of the people they loved, that same old system reached into new territory. It began to fire not just at danger, but at meaning, at awe, at a rising chorus, a turning point in a story, a moment almost too big to hold in one chest. The alarm learned to ring for beauty. Scientists have a name for that particular shiver, frisson. And when neuroscientists at McGill University scanned people in the exact moment music was giving them chills, they watched the brain flood itself with dopamine, the same chemical reward it releases for food, for sex, for the things evolution treats as worth living for. The wave up your arm is your oldest alarm firing a reward, telling you without a single word, this one matters. Charles Darwin saw the thread a century and a half ago. In his book on the expression of emotion in 1872, he wrote about the involuntary bristling of hair in frightened and furious animals and in frightened and furious people, and understood it as one ancient reflex your own kind had simply never stopped sharing with them. He had no brain scans. He could see it anyway. And here is the last surprise, the one that turns the whole thing warm. That little muscle may not be so useless after all. In 2020, researchers at Harvard found that the erector pili does more than yank a hair. It physically bridges the nerve to the stem cells that grow new hair. Cold air fires the muscle, and the muscle helps wake those cells and rebuild the coat over time. The ghost, it turns out, still tends the garden. Even now, on your bare arm, it is quietly holding down a second job you never knew it had. So think about what your skin is actually doing when it rises. You are in a warm room, you are not cold, and nothing is hunting you. A song swells, or someone says the exact right thing, or a memory lands with its full weight, and a wave lifts every fine hair on your arm. Your body has just reached back across 1,000,000 years, pulled the string on a coat that no longer exists, and raised it to salute a piece of music, to answer a kindness, to mark a moment your thinking mind had not even finished deciding was important. You have been taught that it's random, or that it's just the cold, or that it's a little embarrassing, this bristling at a chorus like a startled cat. It is none of those things. It is the most honest thing your body does. It cannot lie, and it cannot be faked. It fires beneath you and before you at whatever actually moved you, and it tells you the truth a half second before your careful mind can talk you out of it. So the next time a song lifts the hair on your arm in a warm, safe room, and some part of you wants to feel foolish, don't. That is a muscle older than humanity, doing the one thing it has always done, reaching for a coat that is gone, standing up for something that mattered. Right now, in a warm room, with nothing hunting you, a wave of tiny bumps just rose across your skin. Now you know what stood up, and now you know it was never nothing. Read the next word slowly and notice your own jaw. Yawn. Somewhere behind your back teeth, a small muscle just leaned toward it. Maybe your mouth stayed shut, maybe it didn't. Either way, some part of you just answered a word on a screen, a word that is not tired, is not a person, is not even a sound. You are one of 8 billion people carrying this reflex, and you are very far from the first to carry it. A dog does it, a chimpanzee does it, a wolf does it. The machinery under it is so old that it was already running in animals long before the first dinosaur ever walked. And yet here you are, a modern adult who believes most of the time that you are the one in charge, that your body is yours, that you decide when your own mouth opens. Then a stranger on a screen tips their head back and stretches their jaw, and your throat rises to follow, and nobody stopped to ask you first. That should feel like a small, silly thing. It isn't, because a caught yawn is not really about being tired at all. It is a signal, and the question of whose yawns you catch and whose you don't quietly points at something you would probably never say about yourself out loud. Hold on to that until the end. Start with the yawn alone, before it ever spreads. You were taught, almost certainly, that you yawn to get oxygen, that the room has gone stuffy, your blood is running low on air, and one big pull tops you back up. It is a tidy story. It is also wrong. When researchers gave people extra oxygen to breathe, they did not yawn any less. When they loaded the air with carbon dioxide, they did not yawn any more. The yawn calmly ignored the one thing it was supposed to be there to fix. And still, 100 years later, we keep repeating the oxygen story to each other, because a wrong answer we understand is more comfortable than a right one we don't. So what is it actually doing? The leading answer today is stranger and more interesting. A yawn may be a way of cooling your brain. Your brain is a small, hot engine, and it works best inside a narrow band of temperature. When it drifts too warm, at the sagging edges of sleep, in a stale room, in the flat gray middle of boredom, something has to pull it back. And a yawn is a beautifully violent little act. The jaw cranks wide and floods the face with blood. The lungs drag in a long draft of cooler outside air. For a moment, your whole head becomes a radiator, throwing off heat. Researchers found that people yawn less when a cool pack is pressed to their forehead, and that yawning even rises and falls with the seasons. The yawn is not chasing air, it is chasing temperature.
Which reframes the whole thing. A yawn is a reset. It is your body reaching for a lever to change its own state, to drag you up toward alertness or to settle you down toward sleep. That is why they cluster at the seams of your day, waking, tiring, bored, nervous, right at the edges where one state tips over into the next. So why would a private little reset button be catching? Because this is the part that should stop you. You do not even have to see a yawn to catch one. You can hear it in the dark. You can read the word on a page. You can simply think about it for too long, which by now you have. One of the researchers who spent his whole life on this found that most people, asked only to sit and think about yawning, began to yawn within minutes. It leaks through you at the lightest touch. Somewhere between 4 and 6 of every 10 people are wide open to it.
And here's the clue that changes everything. This catching is not the same thing as the yawn. It is a second layer laid on top, and it only shows up in certain kinds of animals. The solitary ones don't have it. A tortoise, alone in its shell, yawns and never once catches yours back. But the social animals catch it constantly. Chimpanzees, wolves, dogs, some birds, and you. It even leaps between species. A dog will catch a yawn from the human it lives with, and catch it more often from the human it loves than from a stranger kneeling in front of it. Whatever this thing is, it rides on closeness, and it barely notices the boundary between one animal and the next. So picture the group it was built for. The light is going. A small band is gathered low to the ground as the day burns out, the fire not yet more than embers, the plain around them softening into dark. One of them yawns, a long, unhurried thing. The one beside her feels it move through her own jaw a moment later, and yawns too. Then the next. No one says a word. The yawn travels down the line like a message with no sender, and one by one their guards come down together, their bodies agreeing, without a single decision being made, that the day is over and it is safe now to let go. They are not a heap of separate animals. For that moment, they are one nervous system, breathing itself down toward sleep in unison. It works the other way in daylight too. One of them jerks up from a doze and yawns, and the yawn ripples outward through the circle, and a drowsy ring of bodies sharpens by a single degree, the whole group pulling its own alertness back up together, before any one of them could tell you why. That is what the reflex is for. It is a way of keeping a group in step, of syncing when to rest and when to rise, so the band moves and settles as one body instead of 30 arguing ones. And now the part I asked you to hold. Who do you catch it from? Not everyone equally. When researchers measured it carefully, the yawn turned out to travel along the lines of the heart. Strangers pass it to you weakly, acquaintances a little more, friends and family most of all. The closer the bond, the more helplessly the yawn jumps the gap. It maps roughly onto how near a person already is to you. And it arrives on schedule in a child's life at around 4 or 5 years old, the very age when a child first grasps that other people have their own separate minds, their own weather moving behind their own eyes. Where reading other people runs harder, the catching tends to run weaker too. Scientists still argue about exactly what that means, whether the caught yawn measures deep empathy or something plainer, like how closely you happen to be watching another face. But the shape of it is hard to unsee. The reflex you feel faintly embarrassed by, the one that hijacks your mouth in the middle of a meeting, is tangled up in the same wiring you use to feel your way into another person. It is closeness made visible for half a second in muscle. So come back to your own face at your own desk. You scroll alone. You spend a great deal of your life behaving as though you were a sealed unit, one person behind one set of eyes, running your own private thoughts inside your own private skull. And there is a particular modern loneliness that comes with living that way, a quiet certainty that you are on your own in there. That certainty is new.
Your body never agreed to it. So what is that yawn actually reaching for? Because your body still runs the older program, the one that never believed you were sealed off at all, the one that treats you as a single node inside something much larger, and that when the node beside you lowers its guard, quietly lowers yours to match. You yawned at a stranger on a screen a few minutes ago for one reason. Uncounted generations of your ancestors survived precisely because they were that permeable to one another, that easily tuned, that ready to move as one. So the next time it climbs your throat because somebody across the room started it, in the meeting, on the late train, from the person you love at the far end of the couch, you do not have to fight it, and you certainly do not have to feel foolish. That helpless little pull is one of the oldest pieces of evidence you carry that you were never built to be alone in there. Does that really sound like a weakness to you? It is the body remembering the shape of its group and reaching without asking your permission for the rest of us. And if a single written word made you yawn a few minutes ago, that was not your body slipping loose of your control. That was your body doing the one thing it has always known how to do: feel another of its kind nearby and lean quietly toward the warmth of the group.